kingdom of God has come. Oh, love and peace. The kingdom of God has come in Jesus Christ.
Welcome, my dear friends, to another episode of our broadcast, Voice of His Kingdom. Today I'll be discussing the topic, the pursuit of God. And we'll take my text from the book of Psalms, chapter 63, from verses 6 to 8. So let's read the text together. The psalmist says, "On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night. Because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings. My soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me." And recently I read a book by a man called A.W. Tozer. And the title of his book is The Pursuit of God. Very good book. It was first published in 1949, but has had many reprints. Now, in this book, he discusses his walk with God as a priority as far as his Christian walk is concerned. And he allowed nothing else to interfere with his walk with God. He delighted in the daily practice of the presence of God and had a remarkable prayer life. This book is very helpful for those testing for God. And I pray, my friends, that you will yearn and thirst for God and without undue distractions. There are some quotes from the book I would like to share with you. He says, "To seek God does not narrow one's life, but brings it rather to the level of highest possible fulfillment." And this is very instructive. When we seek God with all our heart and all our strength and soul, it doesn't narrow our lives. No. Rather, it brings us to the highest possible place of fulfillment. Then, he says, there are those, while they love the altar and delight in the sacrifice, are yet unable to reconcile themselves to the continuous absence of the fire. The impulse to see God, he says, comes from Him. But the outworking of the impulse is ours to follow. So here he puts the responsibility of the pursuit of God on us. Not on God Himself, but on us. He says that the world is perishing for lack of knowledge, but the church is famishing for the want of His presence. We need the presence of God, but we can only enjoy the presence of God when we pursue God. And then he says, acute desire must be present, and there will be no manifestation of Christ to His people if the acute desire is not there. So may we desire today, my friends, desire God, yearn for God. As the psalmist says that the deer pants for the streams of water, so does my heart pant or yearn for you, oh my God. So let's look at some key points from our passage from Psalm 63. In verse 6, the psalmist says, "On my bed I remember you. I think of you through the watches of the night." Jeremiah in chapter 29 verse 13, he says, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." So there's a place for seeking God if we are going to enjoy the presence of God. There's a place for seeking God in our pursuit of God. Job's friend said, "But as for me, I will seek God, and I will place my cause before Him." In Job chapter 5 verse 8. Apostle Paul, even though he had become an apostle, was still striving to know Jesus. He says that I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of sharing in his suffering. I want to become like him in his death. In Philippians chapter 3 verse 10. So my friends, the second key point from our passage, the psalmist says in verse 7, my soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. That's what happens. When we seek God and cling to God, then God upholds us. He preserves us. He keeps us. He sustains us. He surrounds us with his presence. The writer of the book of Hebrews says in chapter 10 verse 22, he says, let us therefore draw near to God with a sincere heart in full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled to cleanse us from a guilty conscience. So just like the psalmist says that his soul clings to God, we ourselves as God's children ought to draw near day by day with a sincere heart in full assurance of faith. Draw near to his presence, draw near to his altar, draw near to where God is. We are commanded to enter the most holy place with confidence. The pursuit of God requires that we heed this invitation, my dear friends. In Matthew 11:28, Jesus says, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. So as we draw near to the Lord, surely he will give us rest. It also requires that we don't stop at the outer court, where the sacrifice is made. Today, that's where many Christians stop. But that we should advance to the middle court and, of course, to the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant, the presence of God is, so that we can enjoy the full presence of God. Hallelujah. What are the takeaways? Some takeaways from our text. From Psalm 63 verse 8, our text says, my soul clings to you. Your right hand upholds me. So the acute desire must be present, my friend, according to Tozer. And there will be no manifestation of Christ to his people if the acute desire in search, in yearning for his presence is not there. The psalmist says, oh, taste and see that the Lord is good. So, my friends, I want to thank you for listening. God bless you.